said, once again, we're thankful and humbled by the opportunity to come here this morning and try and do what the Lord's called us to do one more time. And hope and pray that He'll just take us and use us for a little while this morning is our prayer. I wonder if there'll be a word upon the heart of anyone before we try and get started and see where the Lord leads us this morning. If not, we're going to try to base our thought out of over here in the book of Colossians before we get into a reading lesson this morning. Just a couple verses here, Colossians in the first chapter. In the 9th verse, we'll start and read just a couple verses here. And before we get started here, first few words here is for this cause, and this cause being the old church this morning, and the Lord's cause this morning. It says, "For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of His will, and all wisdom and spiritual understanding, that ye might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God." And that's what we want to base our thought around this morning is the cause and trying to be a help to the cause this morning. Yep. We took up a reading lesson. It'd be over in the 3rd chapter of the book of Exodus here this morning. We might read the first 10, 12 verses or so here this morning. The Lord being our helper and try and I guess we're just trying to get to you what the Lord's given to us here.
God help you.
That's the biggest struggle with this work right here is trying to get it across as we've been given it. Certainly hope that the Lord will take it and drive it into the hearts of the hearer here this morning.
God bless.
Start with the first verse in the 3rd chapter of the book of Exodus this morning. It says, "Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why this bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush, and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and to the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Israel is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses said unto God, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt? And he said, Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God on this mountain. That'll be the first 12 verses of the 3rd chapter of Exodus this morning. And what we want to try and get out of that, I know it's a very familiar reading here this morning, very familiar lesson in the first probably 10, 12 chapters of the book of Exodus here about how that Moses was called to lead God's people out of Egypt there and out of bondage there. I believe it was about 430 years there that they had been held captive there, and some about 600,000 men, I believe it was, in that group there that was led out of Egypt there after the plagues and all these events that had happened here, and Pharaoh finally letting them go. But what we want to look at here this morning is how great of a task that was set before Moses there this morning. And down here in the 10th verse, we'll read it again. It says, Come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And we want to think about how great a weight was on Moses this morning in that time, and think about what kind of a burden he had at that time, and how he thought, well, I can't do that, or I can't do this, or nobody's going to believe me. If you read on here in the remainder of the 3rd and into the 4th chapter there, he continues and starts to give reasons. Well, I can't do that, God, or you can't do that with me, they won't believe me, or stuff like that. And we continue on here, and we may read the 13th and 14th verse here, and we see how that Moses had that great burden upon him, that great task that he had to undertake here. And the first thing he said was, and here in the 13th verse it says, and Moses said unto God, Behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and I shall say unto them, The God of your fathers has sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? He's just first reason he's come up with why he can't do it. They're not going to believe me. They don't think that you've told me to do this, and just totally doubting himself, doubting the Lord, and the Lord using him. And we read on the 14th verse there, it says, And God said to Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. What we want to look at here this morning is if the Lord puts something on your heart this morning, no matter if you're a deacon over here, if you're leading singing, you're playing the piano, if you're a sister over here, if you're a sister back here bringing your children to church, if the Lord's put something on your heart this morning, there's a reason for that, and he's going to help you with it here this morning. Here in this 12th verse there, we read here, it says, and God talking unto Moses, is certainly I will be with thee. And how that he's always been with us there. And we read over here, I believe it's in Matthew in the 28th chapter there, the Great Commission there, and he said, unto his people, unto the church there, he said, I will be with you always, even unto the end of the world. And he's with us here this morning. I can feel him here in my soul this morning. I'm certainly glad he's here with us here this morning. But what I'm trying to get across to you here this morning, he's going to be with you every step of the way. He's going to help you do these things if you trust in him and do what he'd have you to do. If you continue on here in the 4th chapter, you see how that Moses says, well, they won't believe me there. And we see, if you read back in the 1st and 2nd chapter there, how that Moses had fled from Egypt there, and he wasn't around these people, wasn't around God's people there at the time that he was instructed by the Lord to go and lead them out of there, and he's not been around them. They're not real familiar with him at this time, and he's thinking, well, I'm just an outsider per se at the time there, and they won't believe me. They're not going to listen to me. They're going to say that you've told me to do this. And you read there down through that 3rd, 4th chapter there, the first 8 or 9 verses there, you see how that he commanded Moses to grab a rod there, a staff there, as we might call it, and cast it upon the ground there, and it became a serpent right before him there. And as soon as he picked it back up, it turned back into that staff that he had there. And soon after that, he told him, he said, if they won't believe this, then you put your hand into your bosom there, and you pull it out, and it becomes leprous. And he did that, and it did just as God told him it would. He put it back in, and it came out just as his other flesh, as the Bible tells us. And he said if they don't believe that first sign, they'll believe the second sign. So that's 2 problems that God's got out of the way for him already here this morning. You read on down here, he says, well, I'm of slow speech and of a slow tongue there. He says, I can't speak these things. I can't be a leader. I can't be in charge of these people. And how well I feel like I can relate to old Moses here this morning. How I can't do these things. I can't stand before you here this morning and do what the Lord's called me to do without his help this morning. I've got to have his help. I've got to have his guidance every step of the way. I believe may turn over the book of Proverbs 3 and 5 and 6 here. We may just grab it for just a second. And I quote this every time I stand just nearly, and I love it so much. It's so plain and simple to me. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. That talk sister made back here this morning. How if you trust in the Lord, he'll guide you back to where you need to be. Went right along with it here this morning. I'm thankful for that this morning, and Lord showing me that I need to go this way this morning. But how that Moses said, I'm of slow speech. I can't do those things. I can't speak and convince people and talk Pharaoh into letting these people go. I can't do that. And he was right this morning. He couldn't do that. He had to have the Lord's help. He had to have the Lord did those things through him in our reading here, and we see how that he had Aaron come with him there, and Aaron was his brother, and Aaron did the talking for him, and Moses was just to help Aaron decide what he was going to say, and I'm paraphrasing here. But what we're trying to tell you here this morning is God will move things out of the way if you want to try and serve him this morning. He'll straighten the way for you. He'll make it easy on you if you forget the things of this world. I believe the Bible tells us over there in the book of Mark, I believe it is, and I may be wrong here this morning, but y'all pardon my lack of studying here, but we see how that he said, take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You think, well, the stuff I've done in the church house, the hardest things I've ever done in my life, well, our opinion of them, our worldly opinion, our ways and our thoughts is what makes it so hard to do, our mindset. And I believe 1 Corinthians in the 13th chapter there, it says, for now we see through a glass darkly. We don't see things the way God sees them this morning. We don't understand what God's doing here this morning. We know He works in mysterious ways, as the Bible tells us. And we had a thought the other day how that just right now I can see what's in front of me that way, and inside this building. That's all I can see here this morning. But the Lord can see every little bit, everywhere, all over this world. He knows what's going on. Yeah. He knows what's going to happen if you follow Him this morning. Yep. He knows what's going to happen if you don't follow Him this morning. Right. And I'm encouraging here this morning, if the Lord's put something on your heart, that you please do that here this morning. Not quench the Spirit, but follow the Spirit this morning. Try and do what He'd have you to do, and continue on in this old-time way, and take interest in this old-time way if you haven't before now. And what's what we want to try and look at here at this time is how that He was sent there, how that He was able to, or He was chosen of God there, and I don't know if he preached or if he was anything like that. I don't know this morning, but he was chosen of God to perform a task there, and he had many things to do. And if you read through through the plagues there, the 10 plagues there that came upon Egypt there, each and every time, all 10 of them there, He made a way for God's children to go get out of it, to not suffer there, if they would just do what He told them. Moses didn't do anything that special. He didn't do anything of his own. He didn't do anything he wanted to do. He did what the Lord told him to do, and it always worked. It'll work here this morning. It's worked for some 2,000 years in this old-time way at this day and time, and it's going to work here this morning. It's going to work until the end of the world when the Lord comes back. Right. He's going to take His children. He's going to use them, and that's how this old-time way goes on. That's how this truth goes out this morning. He takes and uses His children. When they're willing to be used. I believe the Bible tells us He gives grace unto the humble, or God resisteth the proud and giveth grace unto the humble. And we need to be a humble people here this morning if we want the Lord to take us and use us. We're going to have to be a willing people here this morning if He's going to take us and use us. And we need to be willing to do those things that He'd have us to do, not what we want to do, not the way we see it. I believe the Bible tells us a man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is not fit for the kingdom of God. And what we want to say by that is how that, and we're talking about it, we got to think of this in the older sense of the old plow that's pulled behind the horse there, and you stand behind it there and you make sure that plow point stays exactly where it's supposed to go. If you get to looking back behind you, you're going to be worried about the results, and you're going to get off path here, and you're going to stray this way and that way, and it's going to look an awful mess. But if you look towards the Lord, you look towards where you need to be going this morning, He'll guide you, and you don't have to worry about the results. We're going to worry about the results this morning, that we're going to make a mess out of it. We're going to think, well, that ain't going to do anything. I'm going to make a mess out of that, and I can't do that. Just as Moses said here, he thought, well, I can't do these things, and if we're worried about the results here this morning, the only result we need to worry about is that the Lord be pleased with it here this morning. Amen. We hope to pray this morning that the Lord take and use us, and we want to try and explain here for just a little while that we're going to be used differently. We're not all going to have the same job. We're not all going to be the same person. We're not all going to be preachers. We're not all going to be deacons. We're not all going to be these sisters over here that they've raised these young men to be in the old church. And sisters have just as good a part in the old church as anybody does this morning. I've been in some services. If it wasn't for some of these sisters getting wound up from time to time, we'd be in some pretty cold church services through the years, and I'm thankful for them this morning. I'm thankful for a mother that took me to the old church. Mother and Daddy took me to the old church and realized how important it was, and we looked around as we grew up in the old church house, and you can see it here some this morning as well. And there's a whole lot of women that bring their children to church without a husband to come with them, without a man to come with them, and it's certainly a blessing when the whole family comes here this morning, but it's not an excuse. Whatever the situation may be, you need to bring your kids to the old church house. You need to make sure they're here, because just as Moses was called here to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt there, there's gonna be some of these younger men here in this congregation here this morning that's gonna have jobs to do later on in life.
Right.
These older men are to be an example for them to follow after in days gone by, and to show them the way that things need to be done, and so that they can learn from that. And we may turn over here just for a second here if we can find it, and didn't study this morning, but we pray that Lord help us find it this morning. I believe it's in the book of James, and if we can find it, y'all just bear with us here this morning. It may be in 1 Peter there, I believe it is, sorry about that. But over here in the 5th chapter of 1 Peter here, we see how that it says, may just read a few verses here. It says, the elders which are among you I exhort, who am also an elder, and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, and also a partaker of the glory that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of God which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind, neither as being lords over God's heritage, but being ensamples to the flock. And that's what we want to look at here this morning, how that those that have been called in days gone by, and I'm not just talking about called to preach, I'm not just talking about called to or ordained to the full work of the ministry. I'm talking about each and every church member. You're an example to those that are younger than you.
That's right.
You don't know who's watching you this morning. You don't know what that's going to mean to somebody this morning. You think so many times down through the years how that somebody did this one little thing over here, and how much of an impact it made upon me as a young boy and as a young church member, and things that I'm sure those people never thought a second thing about, and how important those little things were this morning. If we go over, I believe it's over in the book of Mark again there, it talks about how Jesus fed the 5,000 there, and how that he had the 5 loaves and the 2 fish there. And what we want to get at that was, he commanded his disciples there to bring all that they had. That's all they had, just 2 fish and 5 loaves this morning, and how that they fed 5,000 with that. And what we want to get out of that here this morning is they just had just a very little, but they give it all to the Lord, and he made something great out of it.
Amen.
And that's what we're here for this morning. That's all we can do is just the little things. It's just just give the Lord what he's given us. Give him every bit of it. Let him take it and use it, and he'll multiply it into something better. He'll multiply it into something more. And he'll be pleased with the effort if we just go ahead and give him all that we have here this morning.
Right.
I hope and pray that he be pleased with my efforts here this morning, and his use of me here this morning. But I believe that's about all we've got here this morning. No, it's not a whole lot, but what we want to try and encourage you here this morning, if the Lord's put something on you, if the Lord's called you to do something, if the Lord's asked you to do anything here this morning, that you be careful to do that. Be careful to do it, and ask him for guidance in that you'll do it in a way that might be pleasing unto him.
Yep.
That he would receive all honor and glory, that the church would grow. And that's just as Brother Danny said over here after we sung that song, where would we be without the old church?
Right.
We'd be in a pitiful, awful shape here this morning if it wasn't for
Right.
the old church. We'd be out here in this world caught up with who knows what, having the time of our life, and not have a clue we's fixing to split hell wide open. I'm thankful I know what the old church is about this morning. I'm thankful for what it means to me this morning.
Yep.
It means the salvation of my whole family and for many generations back. And I'm so thankful for that this morning. But that's the thought that the Lord's laid upon our hearts, short as it might be, but that's what he's given us, and that's where we need to stop at this morning. Don't know if we've been having a handshake or not, but I feel like at this time we'll stand and sing. If we have, I don't know. We'll come on around, pass around and shake hands one another.